and welcome to the new episode of Fullfunnel Live. Today I'm co-hosting it with Sam. Sam, you just need to click go on stage button, so you'll join me in a second.
There it is.
Just to introduce Sam. Sam is VP of Marketing at Dealfront, our long-term partner, and we're going, just to set up the ground for today's conversation, we are going to co-host ABM workshop in London in a few weeks. And today we want to cover one of the most popular questions I'm hearing. So what is the right setup of ABM team, right? Probably, guys, you've been following us, so you have seen multiple pieces of advice how the teams should be structured. You normally know that you need to have marketing, you need to have sales, but like in theory, all sounds fancy, right? The problems occur when you start actually setting up that team, and then the question is, what exact roles do you need to involve? What is the time involvement, right? What can we expect out of it? How to get alignment with everybody? And maybe if you are working for a small startup, this conversation is not really tough because then you have key stakeholders involved and you can pretty quickly nail it down. While in bigger organizations, that could become a real challenge because you need to coordinate multiple units, you need to align the playbooks, right? You need to set up the right expectations. And that's the key. So quite often I see that, or let's say one of the most common problems that ABM programs fail is just not doing these things that I have mentioned. So what we want to share with you guys today is a few examples of the ABM teams. Sam is going to present how he is structuring his ABM team that he is leading. So I can see Dealfront's example. We'll share example of one of our clients. So this real-time setup, time involvement, and key responsibilities. Then we are going to talk about the necessary meetings that should be happening between marketing and sales to maintain ABM programs, and just talk quickly about the core metrics. So that being said, Sam, thanks a lot for joining me today. Could be a cool conversation.
Yeah, looking forward to it very much, and looking forward to London as well.
Yeah, me too. And let us know, guys, where you're all joining us from. Let us know in the chat, please, your city where you're tuning in. I'm again broadcasting from our office in Spain, and curious to hear where you guys all from. Martin from Vienna. Martin always attends the podcast. Cool, great to see you. Kelly from Belfast, actually almost a neighbor of Sam. Good to see you, Kelly. Sarah from Connecticut. Good to see you again. Cool. So we'll be sharing our screen. Feel free to ask your questions in the chat, as you always do, guys, and we'll make sure we'll cover all of your questions. What I would love to, where I would love to start is to ask you, Sam. First of all, you did a couple of ABM programs, and you had prior experience before Dealfront, right? And now running program with Dealfront's team. So who is usually involved, and what is the percentage of the time these roles dedicate to account-based marketing program?
Yeah, for me, every time I've launched ABM, it's always been starting with like one person in demand gen. And I've always said it's always been successful when I've found like one sales rep to work with, and you get one rep who buys into the program and everything you're doing. Otherwise, if you try and launch a program where you're trying to feed all the sales team, it's hard to get the feedback loop working. So I would say realistically, you're looking between 30 and 50% of their efforts to really get the program up and running. This is the little pod that I would try and form. So I would work with having one ABM, again, probably someone at your demand gen org, and then find an SDR, BDR, whichever notion you use, and then an AE to work together. But as I say, this has always been the way that I've run it, because starting small and getting that little isolated pod of a team means that you can get a quick feedback loop, understand what's happening. You get a chance to work on messaging with the AE and with the reps, and when they're calling out, you can make sure everything's aligned with the marketing message.
And I'm just wondering, because I'm looking at that setup that you shared with me. So first of all, why demand gen marketer?
I think demand gen is good because they have the knowledge of how to look at data. They know the programs. They know how to run the platforms and activities like that. So I've always found it comes well from that part. I have seen, interestingly enough, product marketers kind of take on a campaign role as well, and that works well in the bigger companies where they're verticalizing their ABM approach, and you get like a really, really good product marketer who knows the solution. And I'll talk about this later on actually, but I've seen them move into that position and kind of run the campaigns, but then they're leaning on like the paid team constantly to actually run the activities. Whereas I find that what seems to happen in every company I've worked in is we've been running paid marketing, and we've gone, right, we need to start getting like better fit customers. Naturally, we're looking at ABM, and then it tends to be the demand gen folks that pick it up.
I love it. And from my experience, I would just complement what you have just shared. I know that also people from demand generation come with slightly different mindset. They already understand, and I think this is where a lot of ABM programs fail. Not just understanding that all these accounts that you have selected, even if you have super sophisticated and robust process, most of these accounts simply are not buying right now, or are not aware of you, or you are not a preferred vendor, right? Hence, you need to create awareness among the buying committee, among specific buyers. This is the prerequisite of successful ABM. While a lot of ABM marketers tell that, okay, this count list, right? And let's start thinking how we can talk about our product, maybe tailor immediately to that account and try to sell, which is kind of a false expectation of how it might work. And this summer, we hosted kind of live case studies with our clients. And in one episode, we invited Joao from Test Trail, and he is actually a product marketer. He was leading ABM team. And this was one of the most successful programs that we have ever done, just because of his product experience. So I absolutely truly believe that these two roles could be the best candidates from the marketing side. Subject matter expert for sure. This is the person who should support the team. Now the question about SDRs and account executives, because we have different experience, and I would love to get your thoughts on it. So SDRs are great when it comes to new pipeline generation, while account executives usually are in charge of expansion. That being said, one of the let's say challenges that I have seen with different clients is that it's hard to actually involve account executives into joint execution, into running joint playbooks. So I'm just curious, what's your experience with this? And if you, for example, if you're going to launch a pilot ABM program, would you ask for SDR working with you, or would you ask for account executive, and how it's currently structured at Dealfront?
I think SDR first, because you can do a lot with the SDR to prove the campaign, prove the success, and then the SDR naturally is going to be feeding into the sales team anyway. So definitely SDR first. As I say, every time I've started a new program, I've always started small, and I've found one rep who is engaged, find someone who knows a little bit more about marketing and isn't just coming begging for leads, and work with them and, bring them along on the journey. And I feel like when you get into like the account selection, bringing them into that, including the SDRs as well, and saying, this is why we're selecting these people, this is how we're looking at it, involving them early really helps. And yeah, it's how we've got it set up at Dealfront at the moment. And we, I think it's on my next slide, but we sort of start in small little regions, and then we expand out into larger parts of the country. So for instance, we did a small region in Germany where we were piloting a new test. It was successful, so then we expanded out to the full country. And in that process, it's the same. We had like one SDR, one AE involved. As soon as we were expanding it, then it was like, okay, now we need to bring it into more AEs, but we know we've already had success. So selling it to the other AEs is easier because we're saying this works, proofs here, and everyone all of a sudden wants to be involved.
And that's actually my experience. I always have seen that it's way easier to get buy-in from the rest of organization, or at least from the rest of the sales units, and also getting more support from senior sales leadership when you have a proof of concept, when you don't come, hey, I have seen this post on LinkedIn, or I know these guys, they have good frameworks, so I just want to copy it, right? But you come and say, hey, here's what we are doing with our SDR. Here are our results, right? This is what we want to do now. So it becomes way easier to get further buy-in. And in that sense, generating new pipeline also kind of is more efficient approach to launch pilot program. Also, because then, normally everybody wants to see a fresh blood in their CRM, right? So, okay, these guys did something and there is new pipeline, right? So it's kind of proof of the concept. While when it comes to expansion, there could be mixed feelings. Okay, we had this client and we have fantastic relationship, so it wasn't that kind of complicated to upsell. So it could be, of course, it depends on the organization, but there could be, mixed feelings about the success of the expansion program first. And also, as I said, like I have seen that initially when you have, even if you have decades of experience doing account-based marketing, but you join a new company, right? Or it would be a new motion for the company. It's still not proven, despite of all of your experience. So when sales see something that is not proven, it's just extremely hard to get their buy-in. And this is, I totally agree with the point that you made on that slide, that it makes no sense to involve sales team, the entire sales team. First of all, it would be very difficult to get everybody on the same page, get everybody aligned with the goals and expectations for the program, then managing and coordinating everybody and making sure that these people are doing the exact actions that you orchestrated in your playbook. And lastly, the sad reality is if they don't see quick wins immediately, they are likely to sabotage and just do what they are doing for years, right? And that immediately sets up negative expectations and no further buy-in to maintain the motion. So I completely agree with these points. And
one interesting thing, Andre, when I was at Ring Central and we were first starting ABM, we were using it as our mechanism to go up market, and the sales cycle was about, let's say, 18 months. So it was, you're trying to launch a new program, but you definitely can't wait 18 months to prove it was successful. So what we actually did is we cheated and we started with the leads that were already in the system, and we worked on trying to reduce the sales cycle first of all by saying, okay, if we end up bringing these deals into an ABM program, we involve more of the stakeholders, we get the buying committee there, we could kind of prove it out. So we ran that for like 6 months, proved that we were able to shorten the sales cycle, and we were closing deals through our program, which then we took the same process, but then we got the same AEs, the same AE we brought into like the new lead generation program. And again, it all worked out in the end. But it was being faced with that challenge of, we wanted to prove the campaigns were going to be successful, but we knew we'd never get an 18-month timeline to do so.
Yeah, and actually I saw a comment from Nastasia, true story. And also that was a question from you, Nastasia, I remember, about getting buy-in from stakeholders and sales, right? And the only one way to get buy-in to start, let's say, not running the pilot, but maintaining it, is just to compare the results of your pilot program to what sales is actually doing. The way, hence, so today is not the topic to discuss the pilot program, and I can share the episode. Also, we had an episode on how to get buy-in of stakeholders. I'll just drop a few cents here. One of the key things is just making sure when we select an SDR from my experience, there should be 2 prerequisites, and Sam, feel free to add your thoughts here. I think one of the key things here, first of all, it should be a sales rep that is already friendly towards marketing. So a person who is willing to collaborate, right? It's kind of, the program is likely to fail if you have an experienced person, right? But this person is not willing to collaborate with you. This person might have a defensive mindset. Okay, just leave me alone. I know my stuff, right? These things. Or this person simply doesn't believe in marketing. Whatever could be the reason, right? That's one requisite. And the second one is the domain knowledge. Unfortunately, I have seen a few programs failed just because the sales reps had a very surface understanding of their ideal customer profile, of the jobs to be done, of these people, of real needs. So all they had is, sales playbooks, sales decks, etc. And they could obviously send this different scripts, automated messages, automated emails, but they couldn't really, even if they had willingness to collaborate, but they simply couldn't implement ABM playbooks just because they couldn't speak customer language. They couldn't maintain the conversation, right? So they were literally an intermediate agent. Hey, would you like to book a call? So I will bring, solution architect or account executive or whoever, right? But then buyers, they immediately see this, right? So they start ignoring this. So these are 2 requisites when setting up the team. And let me know if you would add anything else.
I agree. I think it works best when you've got salespeople which are, as you say, interested in marketing, interested in what you're doing, and can hold those conversations. And I think the biggest mistake you see is, as you mentioned earlier, people expecting instant results. So they need to know that this is a nurturing program. We're not attracting the warm market. We're getting people warmed up. So yeah, definitely agree with you. And I think in Dealfront, the way we run it is, so again, it goes to this slide, but we create these little pods. So on Slack, we'll have our Patrick, who's running the ABM campaign, and he'll be in there with the SDR. And any lead that comes in, we see the trigger event in Slack, and we're checking it between us. And obviously with Lead Feeder, we look at the website visitor. So if someone's visited the website, we'll go on, we'll check it, we'll look at the data, we'll understand a bit more about that. And it means that we're constantly agreeing, together we're saying, okay, this looks like a good fit. Do you agree? And we get their feedback, and then we can adjust our campaigns, adjust our targeting. But it just means that there's that constant feedback loop, which really, really helps.
Yeah, and by the way, there was a question from some of you, which is slightly misaligned with today's conversation, but there was a question about tools that we use for ABM. And the way how we got basically partnered with Dealfront is that we were always looking for a platform that will enable us and our clients to run ABM programs without, spending 6 figures on a specific platform, right? So actually, when Lead Feeder earlier merged with Dealfront, basically those guys created, not with Dealfront, but with how the company was
called.
EchoBot, correct, in Germany. They created the new platform Dealfront, which is basically a good alternative to costly ABM platforms. And this is what we use as almost all of our clients that are willing to, let's say, switch from expensive stacks. So what we always do, we always say that what we love about Dealfront, that the guys have or allow you to set up free account and try it to see how it works. So I'm dropping the link in the chat, and if you guys are willing to check it and sign up for the product, feel free to do it. So coming back to the teams, one of the things that I also have seen with the smaller teams, right? First of all, it's velocity of everything, how fast you are making decisions, right? How fast you are executing specific steps. It's the key. In ABM, it's one of the keys, right? Because before you'll get an approval of doing something, you can lose the momentum, right? Which is really important when you work on account warm-up, account engagement, and then activation. So this is one of the keys which you mentioned. And also, another thing is that it's always a small scope program, right? I think that when you start with account-based marketing, it's completely different from when you have a robust motion, which becomes a central part of your the core of your go-to-market strategy, when everybody is using the centralized ABM framework, right? But one of the keys, we always say, this is the framework that we called in a funny way 1-1-1-1-1-10, which means one market, one vertical, one marketer, one SDR, and maximum 10 accounts in the beginning. Why? Just because with that setup, we know from practice, it's way easier to move forward. And also, why 10 accounts? That could be a good question, right? Because there are certain requisites for this. When we select these accounts, we always suggest sales team to ask a question. If you guys would imagine that this month we are going to bet your compensation on these accounts, right? What criteria these accounts should match? That question changes everything. So now instead of, hey, I want to sell to JP Morgan, it becomes way more realistic. Okay, so let's sit down and let's define real account qualification criteria, right? We have a certain playbook for this. So if some of you will be interested, I can share it. We once wrote it, published it in our newsletter on Substack, so I can share the link to the archive. But the point is that this team can code together and do all the steps, first of all, manually, right, to build the real handbook. Because later you can define which of these areas can be automated or accelerated with a certain software, right? That's the right way. Because quite often I see the completely opposite approach. Okay, let's purchase technology and maybe hire agents, and agents will help us to do it, right? No, the key is that when you define these characteristics, obviously you need to narrow down your focus, right? And that means that you need just to be sure that you're doing this in just one market, and you have sometimes, but just not to overwhelm everybody, we love to do cluster programs where it could be a program based on challenge that is that unites accounts from different verticals, but that's another story. The key point is that it's still small and scoped. One of the questions that folks asked when they were signing up for this event, and I would love to ask you this question, Sam, is how do you get the alignment with other department leaders? And so how do you, first of all, let's start with sales, right? How do you get alignment with sales to get these necessary resources, either SDRs or account executives? And then the question that comes as a consequence, what can we expect? How do you address this?
Yeah, it does depend on the sales profile you're working with and what they've been used to. I think, I've worked with sales profiles, as we say, they're just pure inbound reps. They're used to everything coming in, and I don't want to say it, it's not a very nice term, but they're kind of order takers. They're not used to having that relationship. And when I've worked with them and you're trying to convince them that we need to change tactics, it's normally come from a need of, like, we're trying to move up market, we're trying to grow ARPAs, we need bigger deals. And you show them that there's potential to do that. If we're more targeted, it's just going to take extra time. So I normally bring data to any conversation, and we'll show, these are the kind of numbers we're going after, these are the kind of ARPAs, this is how much energy it's going to take your reps, and this is the involvement we expect. When I'm working with the more like progressive sales folks and the ones that are maybe doing a bit of outbound themselves and have their own network and whatnot, these guys are normally coming to me and saying, hey, I want an ABM campaign. What can we do? And it's so much easier with them. And I think when you start working with those guys, it really is a case of just actually like showing them the results, showing them what you expect to deliver, and agreeing, each other's steps. So they hold me accountable to certain things, and I hold them accountable to certain things.
And can I ask you one probably a tough question, but I'm really curious. What is the most difficult conversation you have ever had with the sales leader in regards to, launching an ABM program, and how did you address it?
I think maybe it's not the hardest, but definitely the most common one is the, as you mentioned, it's the JP Morgan, list. It's them picking we used to have a sales guy that always wanted to sell to Chelsea Football Club because it was his football team, and that was a regular conversation. And he'd actually bring back decent data points to say we should go and sell to them. And then it would be a conversation of, look, they're not right. They're not showing the right signals. Like it's not right for us. So I think it's that. And for me, when that conversation never has happened, it's for us to have a very clear ICP, so we know who we're targeting and whether they fit into our ICP. And then two, it's us having the agreement on what trigger events we're looking for, what are the signals we need to have to be able to validate the account. And if we can do that, I feel like the conversations are a lot easier. Probably all the other hard questions are, why is it taking so long? Which we just have to explain the process.
Got it, love it. And I would just quickly love to show as well one of the examples of one of our clients. I just changed the names of people involved in the pilot ABM program just to avoid any inconveniences, so to complement our collateral, right? And you can see, so I will open it here, Fullfunnelio example, and you guys can just zoom in if you want to see, but I will quickly navigate you through. So we have the core roles and then operational support, right? And here is the, let's say, time of involvement that this is, by the way, this is one of the best ABM teams in terms of the results they got out of the pilot program, right? So you can see the real involvement here. So we have an ABM lead, and that person is obviously in charge of coordinating everything in-house, input for thought leadership content. Partially, this person was already running the podcast, and it was internal subject matter expert. So this was the main podcast host they were doing. And also this person was helping us to, when you see this, let's say, responsibility messaging for the active focus list, it means that this person was helping us to craft personalized offers for the accounts that were vendor aware, and there was some level of relationship, and they demonstrated buying signals. So we knew that these accounts have a potential need that our product solves. So this person helped to kind of craft the right personalized messages. Also with the next steps, because the next step is not always a demo call, right? Sometimes it could be a workshop, sometimes it could be a strategy session. So it really depends on the engagement with that specific account. Now we have the second person, SDR, who was also heavily involved in this program. And this person was in charge of connecting and engaging with the buying committee. This person was inviting the guests for the podcast for the main leader. This person was helping to bring the buying committee members to the field events that we were running, making sure that they would come in a certain region. So this person was involved in the weekly pipeline review meetings. This person was also partially doing social selling, so these things, right? Then we have Zach, who is content marketing, and this person was helping us with thought leadership content that was published on the SDR's profile and on the company's page. So then that was, as you can see, market research production. So they had an initiative to run a specific research, and we made sure that also SDR helped to get input from the strategic accounts, so that was coordinated, and this was the main responsibilities. And then we have operational support. So by operational, I mean these are not people who are heavily involved or who can somehow become a bottleneck in the ABM execution, right? So their help is very welcome, but it's optional, right? right? So we had VP of marketing for this, and then basically this person helped to get all necessary, buy-ins with the sales, getting the resources, getting this time involvement, etc. And lastly, revenue operations, right? So doing all the things related to data, account research, account qualification, tracking these different signals, etc. One of the most common questions that we hear is that, do we really need all these 5 roles? The answer is no. The answer is what you have seen in the slides that Sam have prepared. Why? Because these responsibilities could be moved, let's say, to ABM lead or whatever. You can just coordinate it inside, right? Just for the sake of launching a successful pilot program, right? But in future, that's the next, basically, that's the next part that we wanted to cover, right? If let's say if your pilot program goes well, what happens? What happens next, right? You want to expand. So let's cover, I know that you have already done this, so going through that experience, I would love to ask you how then you start using ABM as a central motion and how you build your ABM teams.
Yeah, it's I mean, actually, I think what you said there, central motion is key, because in my experience, again, the more you do, the more it becomes the way you are marketing, and like everything else sort of is fitting into an ABM program, which is interesting because it's a nice way to be marketing for sure. But yeah, we scale it. So I've put it like this. I feel like one ABM sort of pod can have multiple SDRs, multiple sales teams once you got past that pilot phase. But obviously, as you start scaling, the more you scale it, the more you're going to add in. And I think, Andre, you made a very good point that you start needing more resource from the other marketing departments. So content is always going to get a heavy hit, as well as the design team. And again, if you're looking at going more verticalized, then having that product marketing support is going to be crucial, because you're really going to be like changing your messaging and making sure you're sending the right things out to each individual department, each individual campaign.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And yeah, so product, marketing, content, creative. I know from practice, just to insist that all these resources will be involved is extremely hard, even if you want just to get some small chunk of their time. It's hard to get this buy-in. Why? Because everybody is busy, and depending on the size of your organization, right, different units might have different priorities and OKRs. And a funny story that is associated to this challenge is that everybody talks about marketing and sales misalignment, right? So how can we get the alignment? That's one of the questions that I ask you today. But in many organizations, the real problem is not marketing and sales misalignment. It's marketing and marketing misalignment. It's just literally different marketing units are doing completely different stuff. Let's say field marketing hosts the event, but content and there is a certain topic, right, around for that event, while content team produces completely different content and product marketing focus on completely different use case, right? And paid do whatever they want, just completely misaligned, right? So quite often to get success, what is good about account-based marketing, because when you start scaling and you start involving these resources, everybody becomes aligned around central topic, right? Here's our goal. Here's what we want to achieve. Here's why we are doing this, right? And this is how you're going to contribute. For me, it's very similar to Scrum methodology, right? So you start developing the cross-functional collaboration where teams have the same goal, but everybody contributes differently. Everybody has own commitment. Or I know you're not a football guy, but sometimes during the European Championship, we had this discussion, right? So it's like in football, the goal of the team to win the game, but everybody has different responsibilities on the pitch, right? And by the way, this is why Chelsea has so many problems. They have just a bunch of individual players who are not caring about the team's goal. So you can share with your ex-colleague the real problem. Okay. Jokes aside, another question I wanted to ask you, what are the metrics that you guys track?
Yeah, so we I've got a report that I can share, but it's we start very much top of funnel. So there's a slightly different view, and actually it's probably something we'll get into in more detail in London. Can I share? I think I can share, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you'll click on share screen.
It's up. All right. So this is just the top of funnel metrics that we're tracking. I made these numbers up, so I don't read too much into it. But again, this is a really large number of accounts, and definitely not the 10 that you meant, Andre, when you said you're a 11110. But these are people that are in our ICP. And the reason that we've got this in here as a tracking level is we're then looking at who's engaged. So the engagement level decreases, and obviously when you get right way down here, this is where the most of the people are sitting. And we're tracking this at the launch. So this is almost our warm-up campaign. And what we're looking for here is more people obviously moving into the higher engagement, and then they filter into what we're doing. So this is like our, I mean, as we've got here, this is our awareness layer. This is still an awareness layer, but again, looking at the LinkedIn metrics. Once we move out of here, and I haven't got it in this sheet, but then we move into your proper like ABM tracking. So we'll, to be honest, I'm normally looking at more than 10, maybe it's like 20, 30 accounts, but I'll look at each individual account, the engagement they're having on the website, are they visiting key pages? And we basically create the funnel to show them moving down through the funnel, like key pages, more visitors from the same company are on the website. Then obviously we're talking to them, the SDRs are having calls, and we track the sales process. We'll continue to advertise to them and continue to track that they are coming back to the website. And now we use things like the digital sales rooms. So we start tracking the activity that's happening there and really make sure they're engaged. But as I say, the starting point, we're actually starting really broad to help determine who we want to bring into an ABM campaign.
Yeah, and also the difference is that it's not a new motion for you. So this is something that we need just to kind of separate to set up the right expectations. I have two associated questions to what you have shared. So the first one is, how do you define account engagement level?
The account engagement level is based on, again, lead feeder, not trying to plug it, but it is, you know, are they on the website? What pages are they looking at? And we have like key pages, pricing, case studies, pages like that, which we say high intent, versus, you know, if they're just looking at blog articles, there might be an interest there, but likelihood it's not as high intent. So we rank the pages on that, and then we have the amount of time they're on the pages, the amount of pages they're looking at. That adds into the intent level as well. And then we look at, again, how many people from one company are visiting. If it's just one person, then okay, it might not be a bad thing because it may be the decision maker, but as soon as you start getting 2 or 3 people from the same company, you know that they're talking about it internally and it's starting to become that conversation.
And the second question, who is in charge of tracking this data? So what is the role? Is it an ABM marketer, or is it RevOps manager, like in the example that I have shared, or is it SDR?
It's a little bit of RevOps and a little bit of marketing. To be honest, we want to automate more of it because we're doing quite a bit manually at the moment. And I think there's a lot more we can do with RevOps to automate it. At the moment, though, a lot of it is manual, and it is the marketing team working with the SDR. So I think that's one thing is, even if we automate, I think you still need that one-on-one relationship between marketing and the SDR to get the real feedback. And as I say, because like we have alerts set up in Slack, we'll just check what's going on there. We have instant conversations. You know, we're not meeting once a week. We're just talking in real time what's going on.
Yeah, so it's that was actually my next question. So it's an evergreen process. You immediately prioritize the signals that you are seeing, and you define what to do next, right? So it's I wanted to ask if you have any meetings where you just discuss these signals, but it's more on the ongoing activity. But how you decide? Let me then ask you. Just curious about your decision-making process. Okay, you see a certain, maybe a spike in engagement from a particular account, right? So what's your decision-making process? What's happening next? Do you have a standard playbook? Okay, if we see this signal, then we do this. Or do you have a quick discussion? Okay, guys, based on what we know about this account, let's do this and that. So how that looks like?
It's a little bit ad hoc depending on the account and the size. So if it's a true enterprise, then we'll go, okay, are we connected in any way? Let's look at our C-suite. Let's just see if we can find some common ground on LinkedIn to help with that deal and help initially just bridge the gap there. If it's like a mid-market deal, we'll approach it. Normally our SDRs will start the slow LinkedIn warm-up, starting to engage on LinkedIn, starting to use that as a channel to build their presence within that account. Marketing will then automatically will move them into a more bottom of funnel campaign. So we start showing them, case studies and success stories versus the more brand awareness pieces. And then at the point that the SDR has had contact, then would normally meet again. And actually marketing will be part of the handover to the AE where we're like the SDR saying, this is what I've learned, this is what we're looking for. We then take that as feedback, and then the AE obviously uses that to go the next steps on the deal.
Love it. And I forgot to make this quick announcement because we just discussed the workshop in London, and I know we have a few people here from UK. So you guys, we still have, if I'm correct, we have 15 tickets left. So if you'd like to join us in London on 3rd of October for the half of the day, reach out to me and I will send you the link. So one thing that I would love to share, and I'm just curious if you have ever tried this approach, but I found it's really effective, at least at the pilot stages, before you can, when you have an established team and when you can do this, ongoing conversation, that's one story. But I saw that it works really well during the pilot programs, having this kind of pipeline review agenda. And let me know what do you think about this, and if you have ever tried anything similar to this. So the key point is that what we want to do is that we kind of reflect on our progress, on the goals that we have defined for the week. And obviously it works maybe a little bit more for the bigger organizations, because again, if you work in SMB, it's just not a big issue for you to communicate internally, right? But for the bigger teams, one of the key ideas is reviewing the KPIs, right? Reviewing the small wins. I actually found that, especially also not only for getting further buy-in from stakeholders and from sales, but also keep the momentum and keep the buy-in from the pilot ABM team. It makes sense to track this, what we call small wins. And it could be, spike in engagement from a target account because of that specific activity, ad, piece of content, whatever. SDR was able to open the conversation with a strategic buyer, right? Maybe a strategic decision maker of a target account. So all these are the small wins. This is not the pipeline. This is not the sales opportunity, obviously, but it's very nice to show and cross-share internally so people see, yeah, there is something happening, right? And these are all the positive signals. So that's the first thing. The second one is weekly KPI checks, because especially during the pilot program, you are going to run certain playbooks, right? And that would be a specific set of actions that everybody in the pilot team needs to execute. So the question is, are we hitting our KPIs or no, right? So, and if no, what are our bottlenecks? And a few more things. One is the account insights, basically what we were able to collect this week, right? So we can track intent data, then we can look, for example, at engagement with ads, with the content, basically our first-party data. Then sales can cross-share the conversations they had, right? So then you combine all these insights and you start prioritizing the next steps, right? Considering everything that we have collected this week, what we are going to do next, and finally, newly identified engaged accounts, what you guys are tracking, right? So if because I think this is where a lot of misconceptions about ABM are happening. A lot of teams assume that you just need to target a specific set of accounts for a particular timeline. Let's say, here is the list. For 90 days, we are doing whatever, like certain actions, advertisement, outreach, engagement, etc. The reality is, from my experience, is absolutely different, right? If you see a spike in engagement of strategic account, right, or at least this account wasn't prioritized initially, but they fit your ICP, and there is a decent revenue potential, shouldn't you prioritize this account, right? It's so logical. So, yeah. But I know that a lot of teams are not doing this. So I'm curious if you have done anything similar in the past, and if you are using something like this.
Yeah. I used to do these. We don't actually do them now, but I'll say, first of all, my first mistake KPI when I used to run like pipeline meetings like this is I was bringing a lot of irrelevant information to the sales team. So I was like, oh yeah, they've looked at all these pages and they've looked here, and at the time we were using third-party intent as well. So I was also sharing like, oh, they've looked on this website and that website, and I found that actually what happened at that stage is I was confusing the sales team and almost devaluing the things that mattered because I was sharing too much. They were not actually seeing the value in what I was sharing. So that's definitely a mistake not to make. In terms of how we prioritize the accounts which aren't in the list, 100%. Yeah, we constantly are looking at our ICP visiting the website, and maybe they've not been prioritized for whatever reason. We didn't have them in our lists. But if they're on the site and they're showing intent, we instantly pull them into that ABM campaign, and we'll just feed it into the sales team to say, hey, this is a good fit. We missed them, but they're definitely shopping. So let's bring them into the program.
Love it. And we have a couple of questions from our community. If you guys want to ask any questions, just feel free to drop it in the chat and we'll pick it up. Otherwise, let us know how did you like today's episode in the chat, and I will just start picking up the questions that I have seen you guys submitted when signing up for this event. One of the standard ones coming from Nikolai, what is in your stack?
So Dealfront. It is obviously built around Dealfront. So Dealfront has lead feeder, so we're able to see the website visitors, and then Dealfront has the contact database as well. So we use that to prioritize our database. We also have an IP advertising platform, so we use that for our advertising as well. And then obviously we are using Dream Data now for attribution and tracking. And we use, CRMs, Salesforce, and everything else is pretty standard. Yeah, nothing too crazy. It's all built around Dealfront.
And there was a question actually from Pavisra. What role advertising, basically, what's the role of advertising in account-based marketing, and how is it important? Have kind of very mixed feelings about programmatic display ads, but just curious to hear your experience.
I use them. I think this may be where I have more of a programmatic view of ABM. I think like we were saying, for me, I have quite a big list that I'll start targeting to see who I can get to the website. And when I can get them to the website showing intent, then I take that programmatic approach to bringing them into proper ABM campaigns. So for me, I've always had a strategy of, if I'm targeting the ICP and I can get a low CPM, I'm quite happy to do broad targeting, broad brand awareness into my ICP, because once they come to the website, I can do so much with that information. So yeah, I definitely do a lot of advertisement.
Awesome. So maybe actually an interesting question. Who owns account selection for ABM program?
Yeah, I think it's got to be marketing. I've seen it with sales. I just think it's got to be marketing. I think, as we say, sales often want to close the big deal that's going to make them look good, whereas I think marketing want to look. And Andre, what you said about betting your your quota on it, I think is key. So I do think it's got to be marketing, but obviously you've got to have that. You've got to have that buy-in. They need to appreciate that the deal is also there.
Got it. And one question from Chris: what are the sources for account list building aside from intent data and sales navigator? So do you have any other methods that you are using for account selection?
Yeah, because we have the information in Dealfront again, we're using like financial records, employee changes. We use like just making sure they're a good fit in our ICP. So we have different ways of searching, crawling their websites to see what they're talking about on their website. Lots and lots of triggers we use, definitely. I think most of them are standard. The website stuff's pretty interesting because we'll crawl a website to see, are they hiring a new position, or are they talking about, I don't know, scaling, or have they raised money recently? Like all that kind of stuff helps.
Yeah, and I think I would just add a few cents here. I think the answer to this question should be, who is your ideal customer profile? And when it comes to ICP, usually companies think, okay, this is I'm just generalizing here, of course, right? But usually ICP is very proud. Okay, so this are our firmographics criteria, right? For example, we want to sell to the banks or financial organization in the North America, right? And then you end up with a huge list. And just because, all of them could be financial institutions, and potentially all of them, just because they're financial institutions, they might have the challenge that our product solves. We need to market all of them. In reality, I think that aside from this, you have already mentioned this, and there are certain criteria that should be true. Account qualification criteria. What makes account a good fit? I think this is really important. It's exactly this is like $1 million question. If we were going to bet sales compensation, right, on this account, like, will it pay off or no, right? So that's the key. And for this, you need to run deal analysis of similar accounts that belong to that cluster, right? Then you can see the patterns, win deals and loss deals, because then you can see the examples. I would give just a perfect example of one of the companies that we have worked with. It's a software development company, but very niche. So their key offering and their key domain expertise is developing specific products for ad tech vertical. So one of the things they were focusing on was mobile SDK. It's just pretty technical product. But now here is the key. To define accounts that we selected for the ABM program, we took completely different approach, not looking at the accounts. Now, first of all, there was obviously this firmographics criteria narrowed down by certain verticals inside EdTech and geographical markets. But then the way how we selected these accounts was completely different approach. So we start looking for the accounts that have developers that have in their profile mobile SDK as a keyword inside the responsibilities, in the title, or in the about section, because this was the only way to. It's very technical. Basically, there are two ways how you can define these accounts. That way that I have just presented, right? If you can identify developers who are in charge of that specific niche product, or if you have one-on-one conversation with the account, which is in reality a very like a big problem for almost everybody, right? So to answer that question, I think the technology, the approach that you are going to take is heavily dependent on who is your ideal customer profile. And yeah, John said, I appreciate the process. I believe there was a great session Let me pull it in to fill in the gaps. I've been using Leadfeeder now, Dealfront, for almost 3 years. It is a great platform for B2B marketing in general. So cool, we have one of the happiest customers of Dealfront here. Thanks a lot for sharing, John. Appreciate it. Yeah, and that being said, I see we have covered everything in 1 hour. So guys, appreciate your feedback in the chat and also the great comments. I even didn't notice that we have spent 60 minutes together. So Sam, thanks a lot for this brilliant conversation. And thanks for joining me and preparing everything that's made this session practical.
Thank you, Andre. It's been great. Yeah, and looking forward to doing more in London.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also looking forward to meeting you in a few weeks. I know I saw Paul here. I know Paul is joining us in London as well. And yeah, if we have other guys who are interested in coming, just ping me on LinkedIn or reply to any of my emails. And I'm happy to host you as well. Have a great rest of the week, everybody, and talk to you soon. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.